Eritrean news, views on Eritrean news. Hello, viewers. How are you all? Hello, Mr. Sajid. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Miss Sharma. How are you? How is everything? What is today's topic?
Well, today we'll discuss about the latest American foreign policy regarding Eritrea. And our special focus would be on post-Isaias Afwerki era. Now, just to make the viewers understand the background and the mood of how this policy is written, I have taken out an extract and I'll be reading out for the viewers, and then we'll discuss.
Okay.
So, Eritrea's destabilizing military involvement in the conflict in northern Ethiopia that began in November 2020 destroyed any hope that the 2018 Eritrea-Ethiopia peace agreement would usher in a new era of stability and development in the Horn of Africa. In August 2021, the United States imposed global Magnitsky sanctions on the head of the Eritrean Defense Forces, and in November, under Executive Order 14046, sanctioned several Eritrean entities and individuals. Since September 2001, the embassy has maintained an NSC endorsed policy of disciplined confrontation with the Eritrean government, under which it rigorously challenges government mis and disinformation, seeks to isolate Eritrea's toxic regional influence and limit its engagement with political level regime officials. The policy supports the administration's goal to defend and advance American values abroad, including by combating threats to face societies by limiting Eritrea's anti-democratic and destabilizing influence in the Horn of Africa. They write, our primary strategic policy goal is to cultivate Eritrea's next generation and prepare for a post-Isaias era. Now, by writing this post-Isaias
Hmm.
era, uh, what do you read between the lines, Mr. Sajid? What are they trying to imply?
Well, why are they planning post-Isaias era? Does it mean that it is an admission that they're not in a position to bring about any change in Eritrea? And do they want to bring about any change in Eritrea? Did they try in the past? Did they try to remove Isaias Afwerki? Did they try to corner Isaias Afwerki? Did they try to stifle Eritrean economy? Yes. I think when Americans say that they are planning post-Isaias era, it's an admission of their failure. They were not happy with Eritrean foreign policy. Eritrea, we know that now it is at Chinese-Russian camps. So Americans have realized perhaps that the best way to form a strategy about Eritrea is to plan post-Isaias Eritrea. We can discuss the important points of this post-Isaias Afwerki scenario. But basically an admission from Americans that they failed to bring about any change. By the way, yes, America tried its best. But through involvement of Eritrean neighbors, it tried to isolate Eritrea. Some sanctions were imposed as well in the past. But nothing worked. Eritrean economy came under sanctions. Eritrea reciprocated. It banned USAID, and Eritrea suffered as well, though people sometimes say that the sanctions were targeted. But I think Eritrean people suffered because of this isolation. We're responsible. Yes, we can argue that. Isaias Afwerki or US. But people of Eritrea suffered because of this isolation. And post Isaias Afwerki, scenario planning is admission of failure of US foreign policy about terror.
Exactly, that's what my feeling was, that by saying that they have to prepare themselves for the post-Isaias era, actually they are telling that they are powerless in his presence, in other words, or they have no plan when he's in place. So,
Yeah.
what kind of steps have they taken for this post-Isaias era? How they have tried to make their grip stronger, and how are they preparing themselves? What steps have they taken?
Well, firstly, should countries plan post-ISAS scenario? Yes, they should. If Americans have failed in Eritrea, it does not mean they shouldn't plan a post-ISAS scenario. Why? In countries, there are constitution, parliament, uh, some rules. I mean, if Isaias is not in power, who will replace him? Does anyone know about any constitutional provision? Is the constitution in Eritrea? Who will replace Isaias Afwerki? No one knows. Basically, there is no mechanism put in place in Eritrea in case of Isaias Afwerki's removal from power. So there could be chaos, it means. That there could be start of fighting between different groups. There could be a fight for power between top institutions. Eritrean military is an institution. Then a ruling party is another institution. A tribes were not allowed to organize, to arm themselves, but these are two main institutions, and several centers of power could emerge in Eritrea. So that is why, yes, post-Isaias Afwerki era should be planned. But how will you plan it? I mean, Americans have no reach in Eritrea. They have embassy here, we know, Ashok Affairs remains deputed here. Stephen Walker was former Ashok Affairs. You used the word confrontation. I think the word was like contained confrontation, like that. That is what US policy is now. Stephen Walker was very critical of Isaias Afwerki's government. I remember he was interviewed on Sat, which is a satellite Eritrean opposition's channel. So Americans want to confront Isaias Afwerki now, but only through diplomatic means. Post-Isaias Afwerki scenario, which Americans are planning, is mainly focused on engagement with some groups, which might play a role in case of removal of Isaias Afwerki. We don't know if these groups are in opposition, or will they be in opposition to be of any importance, of any significance in post-Isaias Afwerki scenario. Opposition groups working in foreign countries, Eritrean groups, are split. No unity. There is no central figure representing all opposition groups. There is pro-government diaspora as well. Youth is split as well. A few days ago, Mike Hammer was in Los Angeles, and there he met with the Ethiopian diaspora community and Eritrean diaspora community. And he met with Professor Bashir, who represented 4 Eritrean diaspora organizations. There are several others too. So Americans are trying to fund, they're trying to engage with Eritrean opposition groups based abroad. They're preparing Eritrean youth as well. They're confronting Eritrea on international platforms, UN, Human Rights Council, etc. But the contours of this American policy about post-Isaias Afwerki scenario are not clear. You can only plan a post-Isaias Afwerki scenario if you know which groups are going to play an important part. The groups which could be of significance are not outside Eritrea, because the main institutions after Isaias Afwerki's removal would be military and the ruling party. Both are under sanctions. Ruling party's leaders and, as you said, the military commander, Johannes, both are under sanction from US and EU. It means they're not in touch with US government. US has no say in what is happening in Eritrea and what might happen in Eritrea. So basically, US is in touch with the diaspora community of Eritrea. That is what seems to be the case in terms of post-Isaias Afwerki scenario development.
Just a while ago, Mr. Sajid, you said that they are trying to isolate Isaias Afwerki's influence and they are trying to curtail it. So, what have they done to curtail his influence in Horn of Africa? What steps?
Yeah, while Isaias is in power, as we said, Americans have admitted they cannot remove him. They cannot bring about any change in Eritrea. They cannot bring about regime change in Eritrea. So then the option left is that Isaias's regional influence should be curtailed. That is what Americans are doing. They want to put an end to conflicts. They believe that conflicts, armed conflicts, are very attractive for Isaias Afwerki's government. Wherever there is armed confrontation, indirectly, directly, through intelligence agencies, through Eritrean military, Eritrea is involved. Eritrea becomes involved. It became involved in Sudan. It became involved in Ethiopia, in northern Ethiopia. It fought against Yemen. It fought against Djibouti. So when there are regional issues or issues, border issues, etc., Eritrean military, Eritrean intelligence agencies are involved. So Americans want to resolve the conflicts in Eritrean neighborhood. It's not because they love peace. They are resolving the conflicts because they know these conflicts attract Eritrea. And through the involvement in these conflicts, Eritrea then spreads its regional influence. That is why Americans are heavily involved in Ethiopia. Pretoria deal in Ethiopia was signed after American intervention. Americans took TPLF and Ethiopian government representatives to Djibouti, then to South Africa. They played a key role. Now they could be part of the ongoing Oromia peace talks as well. Americans involved in Sudan, and we know that second round of talks underway in Jeddah these days between Rapid Support Forces and Sudanese army. Arabia and the US, two main players, are behind the peace process, which has some hopes of maybe coming ceasefire in Sudan. So Americans are trying to resolve conflicts in Eritrean neighborhood. At the same time, they want to ensure that neighboring countries have American presence through economic incentives, through loans, grants. They want to have their presence in neighboring countries, in Sudan, in Ethiopia, in Djibouti, Somalia, not a neighboring country, a distance, Kenya as well. So that is the policy that Americans want to, and they want to ensure that Eritrea does not emerge as a key player in the Horn of Africa. They want to isolate Eritrea, but this policy has serious shortcomings to Americans resolve the conflict in Ethiopia. Then you saw that last month a new conflict broke out in Sudan. Now they are busy there. And after that, there could be start of new conflict somewhere close to Eritrea. Basically, no tensions in Ethiopia, in Sudan, in Somalia. So conflicts can happen anytime. It's difficult to completely isolate Eritrea in this region, I think.
Hmm. Well, Mrs. Saleh, that leads to another question. This is regarding China. China seems to support Isaias Afwerki's government. So, what do you think? How Americans are uh, trying to counter this influence of China?
By the way, Isaias Afwerki was in China yesterday. He returned 4 day state visit. He was invited by Xi Jinping. There he held some meetings, though we don't know what happened there, what was discussed there, what was agreed there. We just heard that it was an exciting trip. That's what Isaias said. We don't know. So that is what Eritrean foreign policy is. We don't know what is happening. He visited Saudi Arabia a few weeks ago. What happened there, we don't know. For 4 days, he was in China. We don't know what happened there. Uh, Chinese influence in entire Africa is a matter of concern for Americans. Chinese are creeping in through their economic cooperation. They are building roads, they are building factories, they are building bridges, etc. Yes, it's a matter of concern for Americans. Chinese and Russian influence. And this is one of the reasons behind increased American engagement in this region. I think it was 2021 when America appointed special envoy for the Horn of Africa. Why? Jeffrey Feltman was the first one, I think. He was appointed because obviously Americans have interests in this region. Region is seeing new conflicts. Isaias Afwerki is posing a challenge. Russians here, Chinese here as well. So all these challenges, that is why the Jeffrey Feltman special envoy was appointed by the US. And then we saw that China also appointed a special envoy for the Horn of Africa. China, special envoy, EU special envoy, US special envoy, all have special envoys for this zone, for the Horn of Africa. That shows the strategic significance of this zone. We know that Horn of Africa is situated along world's busiest shipping route. So that is why, and we must not forget that Chinese built their first overseas military base last year. Where? In Djibouti, Eritrean neighborhood. And Russians planning to establish a naval base in Eritrea. If you remember, a few months ago, Sergei Lavrov, Russian foreign minister, visited Eritrea. And he visited a place where Russians could build a naval base in Eritrea. So increased Russian, Chinese influence in Eritrea is a matter of concern for Americans because from Eritrea, obviously Chinese, Russians will spread into neighboring countries. They're already here in China, in Ethiopia. They're neighboring countries too. So basically, it's a fight for control of the region, fight for control of assets, fight for control of shipping routes. Chinese are latecomers, by the way. Americans have been here for years. They have lots of military bases spread across entire Africa. Chinese are latecomers, but through their economic cooperation, they're gradually and rapidly spreading their influence in the Horn of Africa and in Eritrea. So yes, you're right that Chinese increasing influence is a matter of concern, and it's prompting US to be proactively involved in this region, I think.
Because in this foreign policy, when I was reading through it, they did mention China 2, 3 times. So I'm sure this is a point of concern for them. And perhaps we should do a program on China and Russia and its influence in Horn of Africa. in coming days.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you're
thank
right.
you very much, Mr. Sajid. Any closing remarks?
Well, just a few words. When Americans plan, they decide anything about Eritrea, they shouldn't just keep Isaias Afwerki in mind. There are millions of Eritreans living in Eritrea. Sometimes foreign countries' actions hurt Eritreans living in Eritrea. If Isaias Afwerki cannot be removed, it does not mean that people of Eritrea should suffer. Americans should be involved in Eritrea. They should try to engage Isaias Afwerki diplomatically. They should do something for Eritrean people. Eritrean people are facing, we have done several programs on that. They are facing lots of issues in their country. They are fleeing because of persecution, because of lack of economic opportunities, because of indefinite national service, conscription, poverty. I can go on and on. So Eritrean people need world support. But when Americans try to completely isolate Isaias Afwerki, its effect is felt economically by Eritrean people. So I would say Americans should engage with Eritrean government, Eritrean president, and Americans should find a way of supporting Eritreans living in Eritrea. They're supporting Eritreans living abroad. They should find a way to support Eritreans living in Eritrea as well.
You're absolutely right. So thank you, Mr. Sagar. Thank you very much. Thank you, viewers, for watching us. And please don't forget to write. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.